Welcome to the Fission Podcast, your one-stop source for news about the emerging nuclear renaissance and environmental cleanup of Department of Energy sites across the nation. Now, here's your host, Michael Butler.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fission Podcast. Today is Monday, September 15th, 2025. We have another special episode for you today. I'm going to introduce you to Mike Dean, who's gaining a growing online reputation as the Nuclear Average Joe. Mike is a young, hardworking corporate guy who developed an interest in nuclear energy on his own. He's not an engineer, not a Navy nuke. In fact, he had no involvement in the industry at all until recently when he became involved in his employer's business segment that offers engineers to nuclear utilities and the industry as a whole. In recent months, he's become the host of the Nuclear Average Joe podcast, discussing a host of nuclear issues in everyday language that almost any of us can understand. He even broke into the national news recently when he called into CNBC's Mad Money program with Jim Cramer. Take a look.
Florida, Mike.
Booyah, Mr. Kramer. How are you?
Booyah. I am just super, Mike. Everything broke my way today. I don't know about you.
I love it. I'm right there with you. I'm calling from beautiful, sunny South Florida, Stuart, Florida to be exact.
I like Stuart, Florida.
Oh, I like it. It's beautiful here. Great golf.
I like Firo, too. If you want to get into it, I like Firo. My wife likes Del. We'll get to Florida, but take it offline. What do we got for stock-wise?
So I'm a big-time nuclear advocate. Those that know me well know me as the Nuclear Average Joe, and I love your show, first and foremost.
Well, thank you. People think I radiate.
Yeah, it's all right. I listen. So the stock that I have a question on today is Centrus Energy, ticker LEU.
Okay, I know the company. And Centrus Energy fits in this particular niche that I've been saying, along with Oklo. I am not going to go against anybody who wants to buy uranium or nuclear because it's coming back. Do I think it's going to come back within the time frame of the stocks? That no longer is necessary. We have a new kind of market. I believe, as you can be, when you get the book that comes out at the end of September, How to Make Money in Any Market, you will see that I endorse having one speculative position in your portfolio. Make Centrus your speculative position, and I say you are on my team. You will make money in any market. All right.
We'll have more with Mike later in the podcast. Right now, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. As a subscriber, you'll receive notification of new episodes, and you'll support continued production of the podcast going forward. It's free. Just hit the subscribe button. And if you have a comment or would like to reach out to me, you can contact me at mbutler@gonefissionpodcast.com. I look forward to hearing from you. In the time since we last talked, there's been a lot of news in the nuclear renaissance and in the world of cleanup on Department of Energy sites. Let's start with a big announcement by Oklo and Oak Ridge. Earlier this month, Oklo announced plans to build a new nuclear fuel recycling plant in Oak Ridge. It'll be built on former federal land cleaned up by DOE and transferred to the local community. The nearly $1.7 billion project will harness spent fuel rods previously used in nuclear power plants and create a clean, reliable fuel supply. Currently, there are more than 94,000 metric tons of used nuclear fuel available to be recycled across the United States, which, according to Oklo, translates to 1.3 trillion barrels of oil. Here's more from Oklo's CEO appearing on CNBC.
This is very technical, so explain to us what this is.
It's exciting to me about nuclear technology because nuclear reactors really only use about 5% or so of the fuel that gets loaded in them in its time in a reactor. And the reason is because, you have to have a minimum amount of fuel to keep the reactor running. That means that used fuel that gets discharged from a reactor is actually 90 to 95% remaining unused fuel. And one of the really exciting things about what we've been at since the beginning of our company has been working on next generation reactors called fast reactors that can actually really efficiently recycle and access that remaining 90 to 95%. What that translates to is effectively taking today's waste inventories, which with recycling and fast reactors have the same amount of energy as about 1.2 to 1.3 trillion barrels of oil. It's insane, right? That's like close to global oil reserves. So massive opportunity to do this.
So the upshot is that we just get a lot more power, which we need?
We get more power, and the cool thing too is it can be done more cost effectively than using fresh fuel because the fuel is kind of already in a good spot to be able to reuse through recycling. So yeah, more power and cheaper, which is pretty top of mind for everybody today.
Are the other nuclear players doing this?
There are a few. This is one of the things that was kind of envisioned by those folks coming out of the Manhattan Project, right? Some of the great minds like Enrico Fermi and others saw this potential to better use fuel by recycling it, by closing the fuel cycle, as some people say. And the technology's progressed a lot since then and really kind of culminated in the US to be commercially ready and viable in the 80s and 90s. And so we started partnering up with the national labs back a couple of years ago with the Department of Energy to start commercializing this. And we went through a site selection process and found a wonderful home to put this in East Tennessee. So yeah, I mean, this is going to be, frankly, a game changer for frankly, not just nuclear, but for energy as a whole. And yeah, there are other companies looking at this, which is exciting because the space is so big. When you talk about global oil reserves, that size of an energy market just in the US alone, there's room for a couple people to be in it for sure.
In other news, the Tennessee Valley Authority announced that it will buy energy generated from a private nuclear firm's novel reactor to help power Google's Tennessee and Alabama data centers. This will make TVA the first utility in the country to make a deal to buy power from this type of advanced nuclear reactor. Here's a local news report from Nashville about this important development.
The Tennessee Valley Authority is working to build a first-of-its-kind nuclear reactor here in Tennessee. The TVA is partnering with Google and Kairos Power to pull it off. It'll be called the Hermes 2 reactor. Kairos Power is planning to build it in Oak Ridge. It'll be the first reactor in the nation to operate under a nuclear power purchase agreement. That means the TVA is signing a long-term deal to buy energy from the plant. Google will also use some of the energy to power its data center in Montgomery County. This is all set to start in 2030.
Kairos power producing demonstration reactor in the Heritage Center in Oak Ridge will feed 50 kilowatts of steady electricity to the TVA grid, which is responsible for powering Google's energy-intensive data centers in Clarksville, Tennessee, and the Northeast Alabama community of Bridgeport. The deal comes as demand for power has spiked for the first time in decades, driven by increasing use of AI and cloud computing. Finally, we'll go to Aiken, South Carolina, where a new innovation hub for manufacturing was formally opened. It's called the Advanced Manufacturing Collaborative, an initiative of the Savannah River National Laboratory, and it's located on the campus of the University of South Carolina in Aiken. Its purpose is to introduce and promote modern industrial practices and train the future workforce with a focus on chemical and materials manufacturing. Secretary of Energy Chris Wright was on hand for the grand opening and had this to say.
That's what this facility is about, right? We want to bring jobs and manufacturing, technology, innovation, and advancements here to our country. And a lot of those technologies that come from the great university here and from the national lab are going to meet with business leaders here today, as we saw, and they're going to turn into new products and new innovations that make the country better and that make the business entrepreneurs there become growing entrepreneurs and better lives for their families as well. So it's just a fabulous day today. I love the state of South Carolina. I'm so thrilled for all the people that came to christen this day. I hope we all meet again 10 years from now and say, look at all these businesses, look at all this prosperity and growth that came from this investment that took years and tireless effort and commitment to bring it about.
That's some of the big news from DOE and the nuclear industry. As always, there's a lot going on, and we're here to bring you the latest. Now it's time to meet Mike Dean, the Nuclear Average Joe. Well, our guest now is Mike Dean. Mike Dean is gaining increasing awareness on the internet as the Nuclear Average Joe. And welcome to the podcast, Mike.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We are delighted to have you. And since we are expanding our focus in the Gone Fission podcast to, more from environmental cleanup, which we've been doing, to all things nuclear, all the new nuclear technology that's coming on out there with the small modular reactors and the advanced nuclear fuel, uranium enrichment, all the other things that are happening in the industry today. I was very intrigued when I learned about your podcast called The Average Nuclear Joe. So let's talk about that a minute. Tell us about your podcast and kind of when you started it and what was the reason for starting a podcast like that?
The podcast originated, believe it or not, technically in 2022. I was actually just looking at those old videos, and the purpose of it back then was just talking about nuclear and not any targeted audience, not in any fashion, just some of the news that was coming in about SMRs. Around that time, uranium prices started spiking out a little bit. And I was just excited, right? And then fast forward to about, call it May of this year, when I found myself as the Nuclear Average Joe, doing a couple videos that was more targeted towards, at that point, the average Joe or Jane that is interested in nuclear. And I want to say 3 or 4 episodes in from that date back in May, the Nuclear Average Joe was born. And quite frankly, I wanted to be that gap between, highly educated professionals, the Navy nukes out there, the folks that are, I say born into the industry because they were just that, born to do what they're doing, and they eat, sleep, and breathe it. I wanted to bridge that gap between those folks, what you might hear, whether that be social media, general news outlets, or what you see on TV, to the ground level, to the average banker, to the person that works at the grocery store, my family, that when I go home on Thanksgiving, I can't stop talking about this stuff. So quite frankly, it was just to reach the broad audience and to get the word out there of nuclear energy.
Well, very good. Your podcast is pro-nuclear, of course, and you support nuclear power as an energy source. Tell us about how you first got interested in nuclear as a topic and why you support nuclear power.
Sure. In a sense, I am an average Joe. Again, I hold no PhDs, no undergrads in chemical engineering. So as an average Joe, I felt certainly the name kind of attracts it, right? But in a sense, I want my audience to be majority folks that are open and willing to learn.
Okay. One of your episodes, you said you learned about nuclear energy in grade school, and that you heard about the atomic bomb that was dropped in Japan and the Cuban Missile Crisis and a little bit about Chernobyl. Do you feel that these are the main things that the average Joe, the average person out there in the public knows and thinks about when they think about nuclear energy?
Absolutely. And unfortunately, absolutely, because there's much more to know, as you and I both know. But all I can recall from grade school is really the cons or the negatives that nuclear has. And it's just not the case. I do recall one teacher in particular being pro-nuclear, but again, the course academia didn't require to stay on that topic for long enough for anyone to gain the attraction to it, quite frankly. So yeah, whether it's a series on Netflix that is trying to dissect what happened at 3 Mile Island, or, the documentaries you may see on Chernobyl, folks don't realize that those were preventable disasters. It wasn't just because of the power that nuclear possesses that automatically happens. And quite frankly, that's fear, right? That's a fear that people truly build around something because all you know it for is a bomb, or a disaster that may have happened, whether that be in, 40 plus years ago or as recent as Fukushima. The details behind that aren't elaborated. And quite frankly, those details aren't out there. They're not loud enough out there for the average Joe or Jane to really catch on to. It takes, in my opinion, someone like myself to dedicate a couple minutes to just touching on it. And then hopefully that will bring on some questions and I can relieve more fears and educate a little bit more behind it. I feel in the last month or so, just the sentiment in the market, I think it naturally, hopefully, relieves some of those fears. But again, the education piece is what we need, in my opinion.
Well, and I think the people who are responsible for the technical side of the industry realize that too, that
Sure.
public understanding, communications, education, those are all now just as important as the things that they do from a technical standpoint to ensure the safety of the plants, that people need to have a better understanding of what nuclear power is all about and how reliable and safe it really is. And that's a role that you and I both, I hope, are helping to fulfill some.
That's right. That's right. And if I can add to that, right? I mean, when you think of a nuclear engineer or, whoever it might be that works at a plant, that's their job. That's their, call it 9 to 5 job. They can only educate so much, right? They go to lunch, they get out to the general public, they go home, they see their families, but I wouldn't expect them to, pro bono do a YouTube channel or what have you, or walk around the streets handing out pamphlets. Far from the expectation. So again, it almost goes back to the initial question. It's up to us to kind of fill that void of generally educating folks on the safety of it.
Well, what's been the response to your podcast? Is your audience growing? What kind of feedback are you getting from listeners?
It's growing. It's, at first it started with a couple friends, couple buddies, obviously my family in full support, and trickled down a little bit into the office, into my company. Fast forward to where we're at now, the views are out there. I'm getting a trickle in of likes and what have you, but I feel the content is making its way. Mix that in with a little bit of, again, the sentiment that's out there, the positive sentiment rather for nuclear. I think it's got a lot of room to grow. But I've heard nothing but positivity, but solely for the sense of, well, Mike, I didn't know that. I didn't realize that, nuclear waste was stored, or spent nuclear fuel rather was stored that way. I didn't realize a plant it couldn't just blow up like a bomb, right? So there's a lot of things that, as I'm still learning as a nuclear average Joe, there's more. I think there's a different flavor of content that I can expand into to continue the growth of this channel.
Well, when you're not podcasting as the nuclear average Joe, you have a full-time day job. You're in South Florida, right. I believe, located in South Florida. Tell us what you do for a living and who you work for, and a little bit about your other career besides the Nuclear Average Joe podcast.
Sure thing. So I work for a wonderful organization, Oxford Global Resources. I've been here it's approaching 12 years, so call it 11 and a half years. And essentially, we're providing professional services within engineering to any and all companies or organizations. The way I like to put it is we help keep the economy going with the companies out there that keep our economy going, right? Whether that's consumer goods, heavy industrials. Back in 2022, I was blessed with the opportunity to start this division here at Oxford, which is the energy and nuclear division. And I couldn't imagine myself anywhere else doing anything else, because I have the opportunity to essentially work in an area that I love, advocate for, and now promote. Mm-hmm. But no, it's been a great journey. One of my one of my first, call it, real professional jobs out in the field in terms of doing what we do. But I couldn't ask for a better home in terms of organization.
Well, your job apparently provides you with a lot of opportunities to network with senior level people in the nuclear industry. Tell us about that networking and the companies that you come in contact with, without mentioning specific names of people. What kind of folks do you come in contact with on a regular basis, and how does that interaction inform your podcast?
Sure, that's a great question. Call it the key stakeholders of projects, right? That are ever on current or ever ongoing, rather, whether that be a generation station, R&D facility, enrichment, fabrication, in terms of the fuel side of things. Stakeholder wise, it could be anywhere from, plant operations, SROs, right, to engineering leaders, anywhere from directors to senior and executive VPs, essentially to earn the opportunity to work with them. But wow, I have front row seats to, the actual realities of what occurs at, let's say, a nuclear power plant or an enrichment facility. Again, it's not what you read in the news. It's what's really going on with boots on the ground. And I'm blessed with the opportunity, because as I am a nuclear average Joe, I have to keep learning and ask questions and, challenging questions, break down acronyms that are loved within this industry. And I can translate that to, again, the general public and kind of break it down in layman's terms for them. So I deal with some high level individuals that, I'm blessed with the opportunity, whether it's 5 minutes or 30 minutes, just to either educate myself or earn an opportunity to be a partner with their great organizations.
As you've grown in your knowledge of nuclear and become more informed, what has surprised you the most about the industry? And maybe what preconceived notions did you have that have been impacted by your actual experience working with the industry?
That's another great question. I'll start from when I actually learned, when I really got the ambition and that eagerness to learn about nuclear. Was I had a client in the past discussing some support they needed on glove boxes. And lo and behold, the only glove box I knew of was the one that's in my vehicle. And I had to ask the question, is this, are we talking about a, automotive application by chance? And the look that I got from this individual was very sideways. And lo and behold, I was incorrect. Not a glove box for a car, rather a glove box for a national lab. From there on out, I said, you know what? I really need to understand this space, this nuclear stuff, right? And, I'll never forget that day, because at the same time, I'm thinking nuclear, how safe really is it, right? As educated as I was in the space, which wasn't much at all, I had the same thought or potential opinion, you can call it, around the safety of it. Thank goodness I had that conversation and started this journey that I'm on now, because come to find out, there's not green goo flowing down the rivers in Mississippi, right? Or there's not big canisters washing up along the shores of our beaches with radiological hazard sticker on it. It's not The Simpsons, right? And in all seriousness, it's quite the opposite, right? I found how much money is invested into the safety of it. I realize how much effort's put into it, but I realize how different it is from any other power generation source in terms of how they track their waste or spent fuel per se. And these are things that you just don't know, right? Until you ask, until you get in front of that stakeholder and they give you the 10, 15 minutes, or you tune into one of my videos or one of yours, right? But it was truly a 180 from knowing what I knew, call it 7, 8 years ago, to where we are today. And taking that train of thought, and no one had to beat it into my head. I didn't have to go to academia, follow a course to understand this. I took it upon myself. But as open as I was to learning it, there's no reason why someone else can't. And do they have to make their life around it? Absolutely not. But the buy-in effect is real when you understand how things actually work. And I'm blessed for the opportunity to actually learn how safe nuclear is, but really how beneficial it is to the everyday lives.
Well, there clearly is a gap in the public understanding between what the scientists and engineers know inherently and through their detailed education about nuclear and about the safety, and a lot of things that they take for granted that the public just isn't on the same wavelength with them. And I think it's important for the communications part of things. That's really, in a way, it's just as important, or maybe more important in some ways, as the technical piece of nuclear, because you've got to have public acceptance. You've got to have confidence in nuclear as an energy source. And I think it takes, in a way, lay people like yourself who take the time to become informed and to gain the understanding, and who can communicate and takes the time and effort to take the message out there. So that becomes very important. When I'm talking to you, I think about Grace Stanke, who is the Miss America for 2023, and she has actually completed her nuclear engineering degree at the University of Wisconsin and is now working for a utility. She has become an outstanding spokesperson for nuclear. She travels the world. But you know, you're not under corporate control. Your message is more freewheeling, and you're able to say it, call it like you see it. And I think that's what's important, because for credibility, because you're not really repeating a corporate message. You're telling people about it from your own efforts to become educated and become informed. And I think that's what's needed. That's what's important, to be able to communicate with the average Joes that are out there in society.
You know, we've got a long way to go. I said in one of my videos, it'll take the whole village. And we did learn that, you know, essentially when things became anti, right? You had a lot of groups out there that, knowing what we know now, who knows how those groups originated or who funded those groups, but at the same time, those groups reach people and people listen. And when you put fear behind it, their ears perk up as they're listening. And all of a sudden, it's not an opinionated thing. It's if it's not safe from their words, then it can't be safe. And I think especially today with the information and the way information, as easy as information is accessible, you know, another reason for my videos is it's right there. I try to do it 2-3 times a week so that it ends up on your scroll, whether you want to listen to it or not. One day you might want to, right? You might hear something negative. That it takes a village. It takes complete buy-in. Quite frankly, we've seen it in other power generation forms. I mean, for a long time, for years, there was a complete buy-in by the public when it came to wind and solar. Why? To answer that, I think it was communication. It was pure and utter, from politics down to YouTubers. There was a lot of opinionated things involved, but it was the communication piece. And I was really inspired when Nuclear Now came out. My buddy, Mr. Rod Adams, I had the pleasure of meeting him now on two separate occasions. I've never seen a movie geared towards EVs.
Tell us what that is. Give us a little bit of background on what you're saying there.
In terms of the movie itself?
Yeah, and the person that you mentioned.
Sure. So Mr. Rod Adams, a Navy nuke himself, and now I think he's more on the investor side of things, but you know, maybe not necessarily what he said in that movie, but what he said stuck with me, and it was just facts. And again, reiterating the safety of things. But I took full full scope of what was happening as I was one of 3 people in that movie theater when it came out, I said to myself, Elon Musk didn't come out with a movie about EVs. I haven't seen a movie in the movie theaters about solar or renewables. The fact that this is here, this is meaningful. There's a message that needs to be spread, and the fact that there's a movie about it says that it's serious. So another reason or inspiration for me doing this in general.
Mm-hmm. Well, very good. If you had if you could get everybody in a room for 30 seconds, which you're trying to do that with your videos, but if you had everybody together, what would be your message to the public about nuclear energy? What would you say to people right now about it?
I would say, the fear or fear mongering, or quite frankly, misinformation that is still out there and will remain out there. Don't let that be the one-stop shop for what you know. Expand the horizon of being open to learning about what keeps your lights on, right? Don't take old stories and past events that pertain to nuclear, the very few, I must add, but don't let old stories teeter what you're thinking in terms of the future and where we're going with, even legacy nuclear, but also advanced nuclear. Listen, ask questions. We have AI, we have so many tools out there these days for information, whether it's good or for the bad. Trust but verify. If you heard something on the news, or if you heard something, from a 14-year-old learning about nuclear in school today, trust but verify, right? Do your own research. Continue to ask the questions, but just be open. And quite frankly, do know that there is a push for this. It is happening. There's investments. This could affect you in a positive way financially. There's a publicly traded market out there for this space that is forever growing. And if you pay attention, you might catch a really, really fast growing train going straight up, right? But in a broad sense, it's don't let old stories put you in a stoop of fear, but be open to more than one opinion or one phrase you might hear. Ask questions, go out and learn as much as you can.
Mm-hmm. One of the places where I saw you recently, beyond your YouTube channel, or I guess I heard you, I didn't see you, was on Jim Cramer's Mad Money show on CNBC. You had a conversation with him about nuclear and about this, what you were just talking about, investing. Tell us about that. How did that come about?
That's a great question. And excuse me, my buddy, Mr. Jim Cramer, that is my second time calling in, I will say for the record. And the first time I called in, lo and behold, was specific to a nuclear company. The purpose of that, it's for the millions of viewers or thousands, whatever you want to call it, listening to that show at that given moment, hearing about nuclear, hearing something positive, right? Generally speaking, I already knew about the stock position, didn't necessarily need his advice on it. But again, my ploy there was to get the word out. On the contrary, in terms of, the actual stocks and the companies out there and the companies that are continuing to pop up. I remember, I want to call it 3-4 years ago, hearing some analysts discuss advanced nuclear, and they're concerned for the lack of competition out there. And at the time, maybe there was a few. You fast forward to today, there is a new one popping up every 2 weeks, right? In terms of startups and advanced nuclear. So folks, there's a prime opportunity, not just to be educated on it, maybe educate your kid on it. Maybe you got a future Navy nuke on your hands, or a future Grace Stanky in terms of academia. But there's money to be made, and the stock market is for investing, and there is a lot of sentiment going in to that space, and it's only happened in the past 12 months from what I've been able to track, and not overall, but in terms of CNBC talking about it more, Jim Cramer, his opinions on some of the stocks that are being discussed in terms of advanced and legacy nuclear. We've never been at a time like this in terms of just the overall positivity in the market, including the stock market.
Well, Mike Dean, the nuclear average Joe, I want to thank you for joining us on the podcast today. It's been a real pleasure having you here.
Well, Mr. Butler, I can't thank you enough, and certainly want to thank your audience for tuning in. But in terms of inspirations, I think I've already mentioned this to you before, but you're an inspiration to me in terms of what you're doing. The folks that you're reaching out to, it's the trickle down effect. Call me that middle layer of the cake where all the sweet stuff's up here in terms of nuclear and the discussions. I want to be the trickle down effect to get to the base and to the general public of educating folks about the clean, beautiful power and energy that nuclear produces. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, you're doing a good job of that. And thanks again for being here today.
You got it.